In competitive Pokemon, the items you choose to give to your team members are everything. So in celebration of this year's World Championship, the most elite competitive Pokemon tournament of the year, I decided to make 6 competitive items real. And not only will I be testing their functional abilities, but I'll also see how useful they are in an actual Pokemon tournament. And let's just say testing one of these items made me do the most insane thing I've ever done on this channel. So I'm currently following this stranger to his property because he owns a bunch of guns. What have I gotten myself into? But let's start from the beginning.
You see, my goals for this project is to make 6 items that could be found on a real competitive team. I also need each item to have some sort of gimmick behind it to make each build actually interesting. So sorry Focus Sash fans, it's just not gonna make the cut. But there are actually over 300 items a Pokemon can hold. So how did I go about actually narrowing down that list? Well, I started my research using Opera, and I asked Aria, Opera's built-in AI, for some of the most competitive items.
And when I wanted more. Aria gave me
more.
And when I... Dude, chill out.
Oh, sorry.
But when I had a large list of competitive items, I had to actually see what they looked like. And for this part of my research, I really liked that I could mark tabs with emojis, so when it came time to make my final decisions, I could quickly eliminate the weaker options. I also liked Opera's tab islands. That let me group my tabs so I could easily switch between my shopping lists for each potential project. Because I don't know about you, but my brain does not have the ability to keep track of 30 tabs. I also liked how I could pop out a video while I did my shopping research, especially when I was exploring the crazy world of resin casting. That was a rabbit hole that sucked me in for a long evening.
So if you want to be more efficient and organized when you're surfing the web, click on my link in the description below, and thank you to Opera for sponsoring this video.
So in no particular order, I decided to go with Choice Specs, Life Orb, Electric Seeds, Assault Vest, Wide Lens, and Leftovers. Now let's start off with something a bit on the easy side.
Starting with the Electric Seed, it's a bit of a newer item, and it's kind of situational. When there's an electric terrain on the battlefield, the Electric Seed activates and boosts the user's defense. Now for making these real, the design is pretty simple, but I have a fun way of making these activate in a real electric terrain.
Now that we have everything printed out, it's time to introduce the star of the show. This ring device here makes an actual electric field, and it came with these wireless LEDs that only light up when it's inside the field. So now I'm going to glue a bunch of the yellow ones to the caps, and now it might be kind of hard to see with the studio lights on, but when I turn those off, you can see that they get quite bright. Alright, that's 1 down, 5 to go.
Next up, we have Leftovers, an item that heals 1/16 of your health every turn and is portrayed by an apple. Now, full disclosure, official merchandise for this actually exists, but I think I can do a bit better than a plushie.
So why not start with a real apple?
And now you're probably thinking, oh, very funny, he ate an apple to its core. Well, this is actually where the fun begins.
Here I'm taking a 360 video of the apple from a couple different angles, uploading that footage to Maker Lab's 3D scanner tool, and 1 hour later, I get back a pretty accurate model of the apple. And after doing a little bit of touch-up work, hollowing out the model, and adding some threads, I now have the 2 main pieces of this project ready to go. 1 quick paint job later, and a custom stem to finish it all off, I now have a covert snacky stash. And now I can eat 1/16 of the snack, or if I lose all self-control, I can just eat everything. Alright, 2 down, 4 to go.
Now we're moving on to the Life Orb, the item that boosts damage by 30%, but also sacrifices 10% of the holder's health. This one is a bit tricky because I can't just 3D print it since it's a translucent orb sphere thing. Sure, I've casted things before with silicone resin, and I've coated things with epoxy resin as well, but epoxy casting is its own separate beast. I've watched almost a dozen videos about how to successfully make a clear orb and put things inside it. So there was nothing more I could really do other than just give it a try.
So I bought a significant amount of resin and a handful of molds to actually achieve the ball shapes. I was actually having some trouble getting the resin in the mold, so I decided just to make 2 halves and deal with it later. Now for the pink layer, I'm only filling up part of the bottom half because I'm going to need to submerge the center in later. Speaking about the center, for the orangish yellowish ring, I had the cool idea of using glow-in-the-dark filament, but unfortunately it won't end up shining through my colored resin. Now that the center's glued in, it's time to fill up the rest of it. And 1 day later, I got this. So I think I can do a lot better the second try. I started by making the pink a lot lighter, and I used my 3D printer's bed to heat up the resin so the bubbles would come up to the top and pop. This time I also made a smaller core and reoriented it to be perfectly centered. Now all there's left to do is fill it up and wait. And this time we have a much better result, but I think it deserves to have one more outer layer. So after sanding it down, I stuffed it into the biggest mold I had, filled it up, and waited for one final day. And I think the patience was worth it. Sure, there's still a couple imperfections and bubbles here and there, but I also bought this LED stand that makes everything look even better. And sometimes, I just can't stop staring at it. I can't stop
pondering the orb.
Well, we can't spend too much of our life staring at this thing, so time to move on to the next project.
Now we have the Assault Vest, an item that feels a little out of place in the Pokemon world. It raises the user's special defense by 50%, but prevents the holder from using any status moves. Now, I have to confess I ended up buying and combining and modifying a few different models I bought on CG Trader, so this will be the only project today where you can't find my models on Patreon. Right, should probably mention that you can find all of the other models from today's projects on my Patreon, so you can make these at home. There's also a bunch of my past projects as well that you can find there. Now, here's the fun part about this project. You can actually 3D print in Kevlar, the material that tactical vests in real life are made out of. Now, yes, this material is a bit expensive, but I'd be crazy not to try this out, right?
And after 22 hours of printing time and 10 minutes of spray painting time, we have ourselves our Kevlar vest. And I picked up myself a Rillaboom who is thrilled to try this thing on. Look at that, a perfect fit. And as badly as I wanted to test out the actual functionality of this thing, we're gonna have to save that for a bit later because I don't exactly want the cops called on me.
Until then, let's move on to the wide lens, an item that significantly boosts the holder's accuracy. And on first glance, this one seems pretty straightforward. I modeled part of the handle in Fusion 360 to give it some nice rounded edges, but what I couldn't model was this deceptively dastardly shape.
So here's the annoying thing about this shape. On the outside, we have 8 different sides, and on the inside, there's 7 different sides. Not only that, but the length of all these different sides are all screwy. So I struggled for a good while in Fusion 360 before giving up and just tracing the thing in Illustrator and popping that into Tinkercad. Sometimes the simplest solution is the easiest. Now I have this magnifying glass that I made boneless, and these 2 pieces sandwich it in perfectly. Now to glue everything in place, and we have ourselves a wide lens. Now will it actually work? I don't know, you tell me. But I think it's time to move on to our final item.
And finally, we have the Choice Specs, an item that gives a 50% boost to the special attack of the holder, but locks the user into the first move it chooses. This one's a bit interesting because its design has changed quite a few times, so why don't I just make both of these designs?
After using Illustrator and Tinkercad once again, I was able to quickly print out all the pieces, and I bought these red circle glasses for the base. And yes, I'm using magnets to snap everything into place. You're watching a big rig video, it was inevitable. And after gluing together all the pieces, we now have some modular glasses for whatever style you're looking for. But what do they actually look like on your face?
Yeah, this is giving off quirky aunt energy. Also, to me, this is what everything looks like, so pretty good glasses, 9 out of 10, obviously.
Well, now we've made and tested all of our items, so now it's time to pair these items with Pokemon to make an actual team. And to do this, I've enlisted the help of Jackie Peanuts. Jackie has a lot more competitive knowledge than me, and he's a scriptwriter for a bunch of gaming YouTube channels. So you might have actually seen his work before on P-Chal or AlphaRad without even knowing it.
So for choice specs, I chose Miraidon because this thing just hits like an absolute truck, and we want it to hit like an even bigger truck. For Life Orb, I chose Ursaluna Blood Moon for a very similar reason. We just want to delete everything in one hit. It's already a ridiculously powerful Pokemon with really powerful moves, and Life Orb just makes it that much stronger. For Electric Seed, I chose Sneasler, not so much for the Electric Seed's defense boost, but because of its synergy with the Burden ability to make it the fastest thing on the field pretty much anytime Tailwind isn't up. For Assault Vest, I chose Iron Hands because Iron Hands has really only one statistical weakness, which is low special defense, and with Assault Vest, that's not a weakness anymore. It becomes pretty much a perfect Pokemon. So for Wide Lens, I chose Serena because it has 2 really powerful moves that it likes to take advantage of in Power Whip and Triple Axle, but both of these moves are inaccurate, so Wide Lens helps remove the inconsistencies. And then Farigiraf, basically its whole job is to just sit on the field and deny with Armor Tail, deny priority moves. So with leftovers and a lot of bulk investment, do that really well.
So with my team set in stone, it was finally time to game.
Let's do this. It's the stupidest thing I've done in my life.
And it was time to find out if my competitive items would give me the advantage that I sorely needed.
I'm not gonna lie, it might be a little too red.
And I'll admit, I think most of these items kind of got in my way, and reinforced to my opponent which item I'm using, but the snacks from the leftovers was pretty nice.
Of course.
And at the end of the day, I ended up with a 1-3 record. But I had a fun time, and everyone I met was actually pretty cool to talk to. So maybe the real competitive items were the friends I made along the way. Well, no, that's stupid. Why would I even say that?
You know, all things considered, I think the team did really well. They put in their blood, sweat, and tears. We didn't quite get the win. We didn't even quite get the top 4, but yeah, I think I was able to test everything out pretty well, but I think there's just one more thing we need to test.
And as you could tell, Rillaboom was pumped.
So, first time getting shot? Cool.
Now, even though I got a text message confirming that I could shoot my Kevlar prop, the man behind the counter at the range seemed to disagree. So the end of this video was in jeopardy. But thankfully, a kind stranger was here to save the day. All I had to do was help him load some things into his truck, and he said I could come back to his property to film and shoot for free. And this was the point I realized I might have been a bit too content-brained today.
What have I gotten myself into?
And as I arrived at his property and got into his truck to go deep into the woods, the situation was getting uncomfortably close to a true crime podcast. But I was determined to get this done, because I needed to know if 3D printed Kevlar could stop a bullet for science and America, darn it.
Yeah, that definitely went right through. I am going to have to take a look at what the shrapnel situation is. That's crazy.
And before you get mad in the comments, Rillaboom was taken to a Poke Center and is making a full recovery.
Oh, and like, I got out of there too, if you're like worried about me and stuff.
Special thanks to the executive level patrons: Connor Rhodes, Jameson Zabalos, Evan Timmerman, Don Necco, Jimmers, Harley Jean, Pow Pow, Sally and Dave, Zebramang, Marco Carini, and Grandma Watson.